one of the homosexual creating phenomena ke bungoma. People are misdiagnosed by the as a woman or zaman no kehla. And the other misconception is that most people are defining African spirituality through Obongoma. Or they're defining even ancestor calling through Ubongoma. Hence, every second person we are twice.
Yeah.
You know, young ladies, they have issues. The first thing they think about, twice. Because the social media pundits.
Who are you? No, really. Who are you? Beyond your name, beyond your position, and beyond your possessions, who are you? Ladies and gentlemen, this is the core question that challenges the core of our souls. This is because there are two most important days in any person's life. That is the day you were born and the day you discover why you were born. And when you discover your why, you discover the essence of your existence in this life. You discover your calling, or what many other people call purpose. Now, here's the thing. We don't go to work to discover who we are. We go to work to express our genius. We don't go to school to discover who we are. We go to school to express our magic. That is why it is important to find who you are, because that is the kernel, the core of your existence. Let me put it this way. Success depends on who we are and not what we are doing. Therefore, our emphasis should be on becoming and not on doing, because our work is just an extension of who we are. Ladies and gentlemen, it's such a great honor and a great privilege that today I'm in the presence of greatness. I'm actually licking my lips on the prospects of what this conversation is about to produce right now. I'm joined by an elder within the Rastafari community here in South Africa, prominent and throughout the diaspora and the African continent. He serves as the chairperson or the chairman of the Rastafari United Front, and also as the deputy chairman in Ghana. He's the keeper of African knowledge. He's a philosopher. He's a scholar of African tradition. The great one is in the house, Tautau Haramanuba. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you so much, Samex, the real number 10, the principal of the master class that every now and then you invite us professors to come through.
It's such a great, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
But I'm so happy to see you looking amazing.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
You know, we are in a time of human existence, the Great Tau, where we want counsel from the elders because we're experiencing a shift in global consciousness. And today we've asked you to come and share your wisdom with us. And I've seen lately you've been doing an amazing work, and it's such a great honor once more to be here with you today. How are you doing?
No, I'm good. I'm great. I always say I'm great because, when you say Tautara Manuma, you talk about the great. The great is great. The master of masters. So I'm good, and I'm very honored and privileged to come through here. I've seen other masters of African knowledge passing through this, so it's quite a reputable platform. But you have always been, from those days on those different radio stations, you've always been one of those people who are holding solid conversation that remind our people who we are, where we come from, just like your intro is quite on point as usual. So
thank you very much. The great one. The great one, like I'm saying, there's a lot that is happening in Africa, in the diaspora, and throughout the world, where many people are suspecting that people are remembering where they come from.
Yes.
They're remembering who they are.
Yes.
We're in a point whereby people are asking questions that have never been asked before.
Yes.
We've seen what has happened with the Pope. May his soul rest in peace, Pope Francis, where he held unpopular positions within the Catholic Church. But not only that, throughout the world, we see sermons within the churches that were prohibited before. But this says there's something that is really happening, a shift within the global consciousness. But we've called you here today, the great one, to talk about the understanding of the African understanding of what is called God, because religions are centered around the concept of God. So, can you please expand on what is the African understanding of God? Many people argue that Africans knew God before the missionaries came in. But what was our understanding? Even though there are people who are still trying to use the missionary understanding of God, combining it with African tradition. So there's a confusion on that. What is, in your view, and the work that we have done, what is the African understanding of how did Africans understand and relate with this deity God, if it was called that way?
First of all, God is not a name that comes out of our culture or out of African spirituality as practitioners and advocates of African spirituality. God is a concept that come out of the Norse and Scandinavian mythology, which basically means Goma Osduba, G-O-D, Goma Osduba.
Okay.
Which is referring to all witches, all Sibyls, all Kabbalists, all Goth, all wizards in Western mythology. When they're collectively called, they're called God. Now that itself, it presents a semantic and metaphysical problem for Africans. So we Africans, we have a name called Mudimu, a name called Kamata, a name called Ramasedi, in reference to the Great Spirit or the divine light in the universe before the universe. Now, the African concept of Mudimu, which the white men call God, is an ontological concept, meaning it is pertaining to existence and being. Now, as an ontological concept, is very anthropocentric and anthropomorphic, meaning it is human-centered and human expressive. Now, when Botswana say Mudimu, the word Mudimu means Mudi wa Motho, the root of a person. So God comes in to explain us. Where do we come from? Why we are here, and where are we going? So the word Kamata, which is a Xhosa word, it means Kalo kama no tata kamata. Kalo kama no tata. So it's coming to explain. So God is always in relation with us. Hence we say is an ontological phenomena and is an anthropocentric. It's very human-centered. Everything that has to do with God has to do with us. We talk about Ramasedi. Ramasedi is a divine light in the universe before the universe. Now we say we are the children of light, Ramana Lesedi, and we ask him for Lesedi or Ramasedi. Amen. Khanya Lesedi. How we are going against Sidzo, Bare Khantsha mona or ufumane Lesedi or Ngoba Lesedi. That's what we ask, because we believe in great light and a lesser light. Now, the African Trinity or the Trinity of African spirituality is Mudimu, Badimu, Botu. All of these things are ontological phenomena, are anthropocentric and anthropomorphic, meaning they express themselves. That's what anthropomorphism means, actually. Mutufatso. It's like when you say, hey, letsatsi la kajeno le kwatile. Letsatsi a le no kgona kwata because it does not possess human emotions. But mutufatso, like in Tubarata website, men are dogs. It's anthropomorphic. But mutufatsa mutu. And they give him characteristics of a dog. Or mutufatsa nja.
Yeah.
And they give it the human characteristics. So now this African concept of Mudimu, which it is called God, it is, as I said, it is based on ontological phenomena, which is a phenomena based or pertaining to being and existence. One of the things Mkhulu Credo Motha talk about is that as Africans, unlike Europeans, when it comes to the question of the soul, the Christians told us that God created our soul. But from the African spirituality, our soul came into existence the moment God came into existence. So we relate to God in relation to ourselves. How does God relate to us? How is God an important concept in relation to us? So for the African, God is a originator, umenzi. In Nguni, in Zulu, umenzi is the originator and the sustainer of life. But this concept is also defined through other principles. Like in the Nguni, you have the 7 universal guardian spirits of umenzi, or is Tunywas Kamenzi, which is Ma, which is the name that we use to refer to our mother, which is Umvelinagi, which is basically speaks to the ever presence or God as the first cause, Umvelinagi. And then we speak of Nomkhubulwane, Inkosazana Yezulu. These are different aspects of God. And it's not only limited to Nguni. The Nguni, they have Ma, they have Umvelinagi, they have Nomkhubulwane, they have Usmaka, they have Somanla, they have Nomhoi, they have Sodume, they have Mlenzemoye. The Xhosas, they talk about the same principles of Kamata, which is Okamaku. Most people think Kamaku is a name we use to say amen. It's not. Kamaku ingelozi yokulunga. Mabathi amaXhosa bathi umuntu omhlophe. Abo sithi siyaqamakusha. So you'll be painted with that white soil and having insimbi zakho ezimhlophe sesiXhosa. Kamaku is one of the principles that manifest Kamata. Ikhosi is one of the principles that manifests Kamata. Ohele is one of those principles. Untengeni, Uzulu, Umlambo. What in religion they will call angels. These are Isithunywa sikaKamata. Isithunywa sikaMenzi. We have it in Tswana. Kiluwe, Kimatsiyeng, Kidintibane, Kitobecha. These are principles that manifest Mudimu Kasitswana.
Yeah.
The same way you go to Basotho, they have Tlatlamacholo, manifested through Jere, through Mupi, through Rammuluki, through Sechele, through Pilo. That is why Tlatlamacholo sene sapula, babona. Mudimudi atladi maroba, atladi tsoko bopa masia, Rammuluki atladi maroba, atladi tsoko bopa masia. So the concept of God, according to Africans, is emanating from our concrete and our abstract thought, how we think as Africans. So therefore, it has no comparison with the European one. I just told you what does God mean.
Yeah.
And God mean, the meaning of God got nothing to do with all of what I've just explained. It just, with God, Goma Osduba, is a collection of Baluika Fela Bago Europe. About Baba Sadi, witches, Baba wizards, sorcerers, Wiccas, and so forth. When they are collectively called in the Norse and the Scandinavian mythology, they are called God. And why is that so? It's because religion, it is culture deified. That is why all Christians behave like Christian Europeans, because Christianity is 95%, if not 100% European culture. So everything you find in Christianity was in the European culture before the Europeans became Christians. The same with Islam. Islam is 100% Arabic. Everything that you find in the Arab culture was, you find in Islam was in the Arab culture. When you become a Muslim, you must have an Arab name. You must have to eat Arab food.
Yeah.
You must dress up in Arab clothes. You must read an Arab holy book called the Quran. You must refer to God in an Arab name called Allah. And you must observe Arab holidays. The same way with Christian. That is why people today say, but Christmas is not biblical. Because Christmas got nothing to do with Christianity. It's got everything to do with European culture. It's a festival that was celebrated in Europe before the Europeans became Christians. The days of the week: Monday, based on the moon worship. Tuesday, based on Ti, the Teutonic god, the god of the Norse and the Scandinavian. Wednesday, based on Odin, the god of the Vikings. Thursday, based on Thor, the god of thunder. Friday, based on a goddess called Freya or Venus. Saturday, based on Satan, the planet with rings. So these things were in the European culture before the Europeans become Christian. And when they become Christian, they took everything that is in their culture and brought it into Christianity, because religion is culture deified. That is why in Africa here, we don't have a word for religion. We are not religious. Africans, we don't have religion. In a strict definition of religion, it must be dogmatic. It must have a dogma. It must have a doctrine. It must have a theology. It must have a sacred scripture like the Bible, the Quran.
Yeah.
And it must have a day of worship. It must have a place of worship. And none of these things you find them in African spirituality.
The way you explain it, it sounds sophisticated.
It is sophisticated.
The African understanding of God.
Yeah.
This sophistication, is it what makes it misunderstood? Because I mean, you make example with the Christians and Islam. Someone would say it's simplistic compared to this, how sophisticated Africans relate and understand this God. Would you say these religions thrive because they've tried to simplify it, or that's why it is misunderstood?
Well, these religions, they thrive because of colonialism. We became Christians because of colonialism. We did not become Christian. Christianity was forced upon us. But Robert Moffat, when they came among the Batlaping, Koditagong in the Northwest, they imposed Christianity through colonialism and demonizing the African culture. Robert Moffat wrote in his 1842 book, he wrote a book in 1842 while he's doing missionary work among the Botswana, which is called The Missionaries' Travels and Scene, like SSCENE in Southern Africa. And he said the first challenge, and this is what colonialism did, the first institution that they targeted was the institution of African spirituality. So Robert Moffat talked about Dingaka, the Baroka Pula, our rainmakers and our traditional healers as the greatest stumbling block to Christianity. They had to demonize them. And then they came up with the Witchcraft Suppression Act of 1895, Witchcraft Ordinance Act of 1928, Witchcraft Act number 7 of 1952, Witchcraft Act of 1955, and so forth. Whereby if you're wearing things like this, or you look like this, these are considered to be things associated with witchcraft. Umoloi. And they come up with things that we don't even have parallel in our language, like when you say witch doctor. Witch doctor means ngaka moloi. Ngaka moloi. It's either ngaka or omoloi. Ngaka ya tseba ka boloi vela. Because tamele you fodis haba uloi. You must be able to cure you when you are bewitched. But moloi ya tseba fodis. So you can't put the two together. So, but as a process of colonization, they have to first demonize this sophisticated, complex system of God that we had. And for that matter, because you see, God is a very complex issue. They are simplifying it for simplistic reasons.
Yeah.
But we always say you can never come up with a simple solution to a complex problem.
One of the key issues around spirituality and the concept of God is how Africans connect to this God. I mean, you've presented a multifaceted understanding of God, almost incomprehensible.
Yeah.
You can't exhaust it. So connecting, how do we connect to this God? Because it's one of the things that actually has brought in a lot of criticism to African understanding of God. How do you connect to this deity or to this God?
Let's take about Bapedi concept of God. Bapedi, they say Khobe. The name Mudimu, they got it from their Botswana ancestors, because Bapedi come from Botswana, which is the sons of a Mokhatla man and a Mufukeng woman, Matomela. That is where Bapedi come from. They come from Bakhatla ba Makau, and then they branch out, and then they develop even their own totem. But the Bapedi speak of a concept called Khobe. When you are a kind person, when a woman is pregnant, when they address the society, so now for Bapedi, they don't necessarily call upon God and pray like Christians do. And this is a thing we need to understand, that we need to stop using European concepts to define African phenomena. Like we need to stop using the European concept of God to define the African phenomena of God. that for us, me fela le ga pheya mo a itshare yo modimo wa ka, you know, ha batla something o ke duma modimo a ka nthusa ke etseng. So modimo is always in their lips, because this is the people whose culture is a modimo culture. Of all the 3,000 nation groups, which the white men call tribes in Africa, there is no single one that has no name for Mudimu. There's no one. Even the Basarwa, Kohalahadi, even the Bushmen in Kalahari Desert, they have a name for the Great Spirit. Because God formed part of our daily life. We lived a godly life based on our own concept of what God is. Now, the Europeans came in. They found us with the works of God. We know Misebenzi ya Modimo. So they claim to have the word of God. So we're in a situation where the word of God versus the work of God. Rona re tseba Misebenzi ya Modimo, ba ba tseba lentswe la Modimo. Rona re re Modimo ga a tsebiwe ebile ga a tsebege. God is unknown and unknowable. God, we approach him through the ancestors. That's why Basotho ba re Modimo mocha rapela wa kgale. A rapele o ye moholo. Mojari wa ditshito tsa batho. So we always knew that we approach God through the ancestors. Like when you approach the eldest in the family, you approach through those who are older than you. Your mother must go and talk to your father. When you approach the king, you approach the king through the ndunas and so forth. So we had that kind of an approach towards God, because when you speak of God, on the ancient of days.
So is that where ancestors come in?
Yes.
In African spirituality or African way, can you go direct to God, or you have to go through the ancestors?
You go through the ancestors. And this is where the white men miss the point. They say the African religion is based on ancestor worship. We don't have an African word for ancestor worship. Renale phabadimo. Renale phahla. Renale mophaso ka Sepedi ba re ba phasa, ba Bapedi ba re ba phasa. Batswana ba re ke mpho ya badimo, Basotho ba re ke phabadimo, Amangweni ba re phahla. None of this word means ancestor worship. It's just a veneration of the elders of the family, because no one knows God. That is why in Africa here, we don't have the image of God. We have the symbols of God. Like this. This is Jinyame. This is from the Akan. It's a symbol of God. It means only God. Or the supremacy from the Akan. So we have the snake biting its tail.
So those are symbols of God.
These are symbols of God, not the images of God, because no one has ever seen God. That is why we don't have shrines of God. We don't have a temple of God. We don't have a place where people go and say, this is where we're going to worship God, and this is the image of God.
But it's for the ancestors. The shrines for the ancestors.
It's for the ancestors. Umsamo, Chuhula. Whereby the ancestors, because now we call them Badimu, because Kimbatu, Bamudimu. They are the ascended ancestors. And we differentiate with the ancestors. Ona le bafatshe. Ona le badimo. Now, ha re lefatshe, we mean lefa la bafatshe. That's the word lefatshe mean. The heritage of those who are lying on the ground. Now, not all who are dead is badimo. So it's certain ones among them who become badimu, the ascended ancestors, who are charged with responsibility to communicate with Mudimu on our behalf. That is why we talk about Mudimu, Badimu, Botu. We bua le Mudimu through Badimu, because no one knows what Mudimu is. Bapedi ba re Mudimu ga a tsebege ebile ga a tsebiwe. You go all the way to ancient Egypt, the concept Amen, which the Christian use in the end of their prayer. They say Amen. Is the name of an Egyptian god. Is the hidden, the unknown, and the unknowable God, the hidden God.
What are your thoughts on the one true God?
The one true God, it also has a historical context. All the way to Mesopotamia and any other society. Every city-state, every city had their own God. And they claim that their God is one true God. That is where it originates from, the whole concept of the one true God. But the one true universal God is the Son. The only thing that everyone witness. Ampulela Jesu, or Jesu hatso hako Jerusalem. Clearly, I won't see him unless he must be a serious giant. Understand? So the only symbol of God, or the only God that all the people of the ancient time worshipped, is the Son. And we can go into that. And this is where we are told we are called children of the Sun. This is where we got the concept of Ramasedi. Ra ke letsatsi, ma ke moedi, sedi ke di stars. That is what we call cosmology, when you take the entire cosmos into account. Now, when you speak of the sun, it's the only thing that everyone will see. And if the sun does not rise, life end on earth. You understand me? If the sun does not rise, life end on earth. And this is what gave birth to so many phenomena, like the phenomena of breakfast, lunch, and supper. This food eating was an ancient ritual, Pekingese ritual, where people have to honor the rising of the sun.
Yeah.
The sun at midday. This is where the name Most High. They talk about the sun at its highest point is at noon. And then the sun at sunset. Now, every chapter in the Bible that talk about Jesus Christ in the New Testament, if you take it and you compare it to the sun, it fit. The whole concept of Christmas is about the birth of the sun. When they say the light of the world, the true light of the world is the sun, not a man who was born in Bethlehem.
The great one, what are your views on, we know that Christians and Islam, for instance, because those are two most religions that have infiltrated Africa. God is portrayed as a male figure. How do we understand it in African tradition, the feminine and this masculine? Is it feminine? Is it masculine? Because in Christianity, when they pray God our Father, the same as in Islam.
When you say Mudimu, we're talking about an androgynous force, not even a person. It's a force that have both male and female qualities. And when it manifests in both male and female. Like the Batswana talk about Motswana o itse ga etswa go galowe. O tsule ele monna le mosadi ba disa dikgogo tsa ba gagagwe. This energy manifested as the male and the female. Now, when you speak of Abrahamic religion now, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, you're talking of religion that were created by insecure men to control women. Now, these are patriarchal religion. This is the religion that the first time we see a woman in this religion, they portray woman as a sinner. Eve, Eve, Jezebel, Delilah.
Yeah.
You even have to blame Delilah for Samson's stupidity, because Samson is the one who has an agreement with God that your strength is in your hair. And then when he decided to become weak because he was on some beautiful thighs of a woman there and started to say, yeah, why is he that is his stupidity.
Yeah.
But the woman get the blame. Now, to show that this is a patriarchal religion, even in the New Testament, they say they caught a woman committing adultery. They brought her to Christ and say, the law of Moses said, if we find a woman committing adultery,
She must be stoned, yeah.
Now, adultery is the act of two people, male and woman. And 90%, if not to 99% of the time, it is initiated by men.
Yeah.
But why is it that when someone is caught, is the woman, not the man? But it is because these are patriarchal religion. They present the woman in the negative. They present the woman as the first sinner. And they differ from our African spirituality. Because in African spirituality, as early as you can go, we always have women as goddesses. You go to ancient Egypt, you have Isis. You go to the Nguni, you have Ma. The first principle actually is Ma.
Ma, yeah.
The first goddess. You have Nom Kubulwan. You have Nomuhoi. You have Mao Lisa, the balance of Mao and Lisa, which is male and female. So we never had issues with the divine feminine, with the woman as the creative presence. Actually, the ancient Egyptians, they say heaven is the womb. Heaven is between the legs of the woman. Heaven is between the thigh of a woman. So how can I go side you must do a little bit of a prayer, because you are now in the presence of the heavens.
Yeah. I would want you to comment on African spirituality, and here's why. I think African spirituality is now becoming messed up because everyone do things in the name of African spirituality. And my concern has always been, if we are not careful, African spirituality will end up being another religion.
Yes.
We see a lot of the mess that is happening within in the name of African spirituality. What are your thoughts on African spirituality?
We need to define African spirituality. When we speak of African spirituality, we're speaking of the spirituality of our ancestors, what our ancestors practiced before they were Christianized, before they were colonized, before they were made Muslim, in terms of North Africa and West Africa and some part of East Africa. before they were converted. It is the ancestors' consciousness. That is why we say we have to go back to our ancestors' consciousness in order to define our current consciousness. Now, when you come to African spirituality, it is pretty much on the fact that we understand that we are spirits going through the African experience. Now, when it's spiritual, it's a combination of two things. It's a spirit and ritual. Now, this is what Basotho talk about as dithapelo tsa diketso le dithapelo tsa mantswe, the practical and the verbalized form of adorations. Now, African spirituality, it has no sacred book. You can't say you're practicing African spirituality and then you are telling us that you're a Christian Sangoma. You know, like this phenomena of the Christian Sangoma. Now you are busy with the Bible and the same time as African spirituality. African spirituality has no specific day of worship, like Sunday in terms of Christians, Saturday in terms of the Jews, Friday in terms of the Muslim. Now, African spirituality, it has no converts. You cannot convert people into African spirituality. It has no proselytizers. It does not have converters, people who are proselytizing people into it. African spirituality is a consciousness of our ancestors. It is premised on the idea that we as African understand that we are living in a spiritual universe and everything have a spiritual explanation to it. Even the eclipse of the moon, the sun eclipse, the stones, the river, the tree. You see me worshiping under the tree. You start to say, oh, these people are tree worshippers.
Yeah.
No, it's because I understand that when you talk about spirit, the spirit world influences the material world. Actually, the material world emanates from the spirit world. Material is a spirit in a lower form. The spirit is a material in a higher form. So everything, whether the stone, that is why practitioners of African spirituality, they go to the rivers, go to the mountains, they choose for themselves particular sacred trees that they worship under. Now, the only difference, the difference is that when you speak of spirituality, you are not talking about theology or ideology. You're not talking about dogma and doctrine. The difference here is that spirituality makes you understand that your body is a temple of the living creator, of the great spirit, which is the house that houses your life, which your life itself is the essence of your existence. Now, Africans are in bondage because they approach spirituality through religion. Now, the confusion that we are getting is that practitioners of African spirituality are approaching African spirituality through religion. Now, in the organization I'm leading now, Bantu Soul Society, which is strictly dealing with African spirituality, Bantu Soul Society is three-dimensional. One is an institute of Africanity. We speak of Africanity.
Okay.
We talk about from Christianity to Africanity. But we say the journey from Christianity to Africanity, there is challenges in between, and it's mental. And that challenge we call a post-traumatic Christian disorder. Now, post-traumatic Christian disorder creates some other phenomena like the Christian Sangoma phenomena and schizophrenia. And the Christian Sangoma phenomena is a serious contradiction because you can't be a Christian and a Sangoma at the same time. Sangoma, when he dies, goes to Batimum. A Christian, when he dies, is either going to heaven or hell. So even the concept of eschatology is not the same. The concept of the end time, where you're going at the end of time, is not the same. So that itself poses contradiction. And therefore, you find people who are saying, oh, they're in the Christian, in the African spirituality space, and then they have is to your. And the other misconception is that most people are defining African spirituality through Obongoma. Or they're defining even ancestor calling through Ubongoma. Hence, every second person we are twice.
Yeah.
You know, young ladies, they have issues. The first thing they about twice. Because the social media pundits are telling them that 14 reasons, they're all over Facebook.
Yeah.
Somebody said 14 reasons uhamba nabantu abadala ubona umjolo wakho awusebenzi kahle.
Yeah.
Awumameli umuntu. No, they're not telling you that you are rude. About
Yeah,
the men in
yeah.
your life. Silly. You think because of you're a CEO somewhere, you're well paid than your men, you should go around and being rude. Now, you go through 5 messed up relationship, you're already thinking, no, these are the signs of and then some, and then yeah, and then
ke la
another,
monna.
ke monna. And then another charlatan tell you, oh, possessed ke monna. And then that man now makes you now start to look for other women, and then you become a lesbian as a sangoma. This is what is happening. One of the homosexual creating phenomena, ke bungoma. People are misdiagnosed by the as a woman or zaman no kehla. Really, they are calling them mukehla this nowadays, these women, understand? And then the same way they tell the men that you are strong. My strongest ancestor, I am told, is my grandmother. Because my baby name is my grandmother's name. Because if you call the name of the dead, you make the dead live again. But I'm a polygamist to the core. I love the woman through and through. I'm not even about to get to become attracted to women because I'm supposed to be possessed, or my strongest ancestor is my grandmother. And this can be explained within African phenomena. The Masoto we speak of Motu Ona Leba Habo. Who are your people among your people? You have your people and your great people. Your people are your father's people. Your great people are your mother's people. This is where you receive your greatness. Because why? That is why when you marry your uncle, which is your mother's brother, he's the one who's going to vouch for
negotiate,
you, to negotiate, because he is sure you are his sister's child, because he saw his sister pregnant. So your paternity on your father's side is questionable. Maybe your mother get the types like these modern girls, but they have male besties. So your paternity on your father's side is always questionable. But on your mother's side, it's not questionable because your mother's brother, who is your uncle, saw his sister pregnant. And his sister gave him birth to you.
Yes.
So that side of the family, you're not questioned.
Sure,
So those are your great people. This is where you receive your greatness. Those are the people who negotiate your lobola. But on your father's side is questionable, right? Now, these phenomena, they create a lot of things. But again, if we go back 400 years ago, you know how many people it took to bring you into existence? It took 4,094 people to bring you into existence. Now, what makes you think out of the 4,094 people, you're only possessed by one person called Iketla as a woman, and that Ketla must now must masculinize you as a woman. And then now, after you have 2 to 3 children, you say you are a lesbian. And then from there, you say, no, lumkulu hamba naye, who attracted to other women. So as a woman, now you must find yourself attracted to other women. So it's a misdiagnosis that is happening in the African spirituality space, and being popularized because no trend, you know. They still return to corporate world. And heal the people. Whenever you are sick, you are having one of these expensive medical aid. You are not even using the mutis that are in your apothecary, in your ndumba, but you are using Western medicine. Yet you have paid close to 300. I know people who have paid close to 300,000 to Twasa, and they've made fake job on them, and then they still go back to the corporate world because how fast out Twasa? I'm not doing no, but badly no. OPDs, I get know.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of misdiagnosis. There's because of they have commercialized the space, because of their these instant gobelas. You know, somebody who trusted tomorrow is a gobela. The next thing they're waxing lyrical on TikTok and on Facebook and prescribing for you 14 reasons that unama ketla. Relationship yakho ayisebenzi kanti no, your relationship require you to reflect on subjectivity or sile. You must try to look at how your ancestors used to keep relationship. How did your mother? But because you say, we are not our parents, Rena. We're not going to do what our parents used to do. So you're going to be rude. And then you wonder when you have the highest body count, you have a lot of exes, and your life is not working. And then when you
does this point bring us to African traditional religions? Because within African spirituality, you may find traditional religions. Would you comment on that?
Yes. African traditional religion is actually a creation of the African Christians, the likes of Ndate Gabriel Mulihes Tilwani, John Mbiti, Jomo Kenyatta, Leopold Senghor. Now, within the scholars of African religion, you have 3 categories. The first one is the missionaries, the likes of Robert Moffat. And Robert Moffat is actually the first one to refer to our ancestors as demons. In the book of Corinthians 20, it mentioned that Mobare ga ke batle le be le kabelano le senwelo sa baditjhaba. In the English Bible, they say you must not take part in the cup of the demons. When they translate it into Setswana, they say badimo. But badimo does not, etymologically, badimo does not translate demon. Badimo translate ancestors who are charged with the responsibility to talk to Mudimu on our behalf. Now, Max F. Mueller, a German scholar, he's the first one actually to identify the Christian deity, the Christian God, with the African deities and start to say, Ramasedi is God. Kamata is God. Now, this is a very strange because now you're having this one individual English God or European God.
Yeah.
We have so many African names. Understand, Lauren? How is it possible when none of his name translate to any of these other names that he's supposed to be carrying? But that is when they try to Christianize these African scholars. They talk about it as the Christianizing the African past. They talk about it as the silent presence of Jesus in Africa. When they go into Egypt, they will tell us that Osiris, Isis, and Horus are Mary, Joseph, and Jesus. So they are searching for the Christian God in Africa. So it becomes a problem that we find that it created 3 categories of students.
So personally, you are against these African traditions, traditional religions.
There's no such thing. African traditional religion and African theology. John Stilwell wrote even a book called African Theology. African traditional religion and African theology is a Christian mindset functioning within the African spirituality space. As people who are searching for the Christian God in Africa and trying to Christianize the African past and telling us that we Africans, we were in the path of evolving into Christianity.
Is it the same trend that has infiltrated the diaspora, where you find there are certain religions popular in the diaspora? Do they come from these African traditional religions?
Yes, the African diaspora traditional religion, where you get Santariana in Cuba, you get Kumina in Jamaica, you get voodoo in Haiti, you get hoodoo in America. So it's the same thing. And it even go further, like the Nation of Islam, Black Muslims. You know, you get the Black Christians. You get even chematologists, people who are busy trying to tell you that, Christianity was copied from Kemet, from Egypt. It falls within the African traditional religion. They're all influenced, they're all different branches of the Abrahamic religion.
Is voodoo part of African spirituality or those African traditional religions?
Voodoo in its pure sense, it comes from Dahomey, what they call Benin today. Voodoo is one of the African spiritual tradition. When we define African culture in this way, that we have one culture with many traditions.
Okay.
The Botswana, the Xhosa, the Swati, these are different traditions that manifest one culture. And the oneness of this culture, it is inspired by our continental consciousness and our Pan-Africanist approach to African history, to African culture, to African spirituality. So voodoo is one of the African traditions that came from Dahomey, which the Africans, when they were taken and made slaves and taken to Haiti, they took it with them. The problem is when you start to see the elements of the Christians, because there's a lot of Catholic influence in Haiti. So some later day voodoo practitioners, they infuse that Catholicism into voodoo. So then they're shifting it to...
Then it's corrupted.
They're corrupting it. So when you speak of African traditional religion, we are talking about the corruption of African spirituality.
Is there a concept of, or what is the concept of sin in African spirituality? Is there such a thing?
As sin?
Sin,
No, we don't have a sin. We don't have the devil. We don't have hell. We don't have... You do wrong, and you must atone for your wrong. You know, that is why you'll be requested that you have offended the ancestors, so go and slaughter the goat. You have offended for the...
But it's not necessarily a sin.
It's not a sin, it's a wrong. Because a sin is premised from the concept of the devil. Now, we don't have the devil as a force that is equal opposition to God. Because according to the Bible, that is why from Genesis to Revelation, there's no part where God defeats the devil. That is why we're here and still asking ourselves, why can't God destroy the devil and end sin in the world? God can't defeat the devil because God and Satan are two sides of the same coin, religion. So as long, before 3,000 years ago, before there was the Abrahamic religion, before there was Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, there was no concept of the devil. The concept of the devil came with the Abrahamic religion. Now it carries the dichotomy of God and Satan as two equal forces, as demonstrated in the book of Job. They are even having cordial relationship. They say when the sons of God go to present themselves to God, the devil came. And then God and Job had this start to have a conversation like me and you and say, hey, morning Job.
Yeah.
So they started to the gambling life, your Job.
Yeah.
Oh, Job is faithful to you because you did this and that. Is them testing Job. It's not them trying to defeat each other. You go even to the book of Revelation, the devil is locked up to the bottomless pit for 1,000 years. After 1,000 years, the Bible says he is freed to continue to deceive the nation. So there is no end to this drama in the Abrahamic religion.
Yeah.
But within the African spirituality is that God is the only thing that can exist.
So you put it clearly that there's no way African spirituality can coexist with Christianity.
No.
In other words, you can't have the Bible this side and say you are of African spirituality.
No. They're diametrically opposed in so many things. Look, the God of the Bible, he's an omnipotent lunatic. He's an insane God. He's a God with petty human emotions. He says, I'm a jealous God. Worship me alone. You don't get that in any of African spirit. Not with Kamata, not with Ramasedi, not with Katonda, not with Mudimu. The God who get tired after creating the world in 6 days, get tired and need to rest. A tired God. You don't have that kind of ideas in African spirituality. God is Somandla. Somandla akakhathali. Akalali. Akadla birthday. Now here you are having a God who's got a birthday. He's born on the 25th of December. He's a son of God who is himself God, and then who sent himself on a suicide mission, and in the process he regret why did he send himself, and he began to question his own logic and start to say Eli Eli lama sabachthani. Now you don't have that type of thinking in African spirituality. So a God as presented in the Bible, it's got nothing close to God in African spirituality. That is why we say we can't use God to define what we are talking about in African spirituality because it presents us with semantic and metaphysical problems that have no comparison in African spirituality. You can't compare the problems, both semantic and metaphysical problems, that this very idea of God present to Africans.
Would you please comment on the polytheistic God and the monolithic God? Because as sophisticated as this African understanding of God, there may be a temptation to see it as a polytheistic type of deity.
Okay, I have a saying that I always say that if you can name it, you can claim it. Now, what is an African concept of polytheism? We don't have that. We don't have a thing called mutu rapela badimu kwabanzi. We don't have monotheism, mutu rapela mudimu. But we don't have that. When we speak of mudimu, we speak of the all in all, the totality of all. Now, that is neither monotheistic or polytheistic. Now, polytheism and monotheism is not an African spirituality problem. It's a Western scholarship problem. It's a Western sociologist problem. It's a Western missionary problem. It's them who coined this when they cannot understand this You rightfully said that we present a very sophisticated idea of God because that is what it is. Now, that sophistication, it confused even the Europeans. And when they tried to grasp it, at first they would say we are animist, which come from the word anima, which means we believe everything has a spirit.
Yeah.
And the shift from animism, when they start to have conflict among themselves, as I was explaining to you, that the three type of scholarship who are studying the African religion. You have the missionaries who try to prove to their Western audience that Africans believed in God, who is like the Christian God. And then you have the African scholars, the likes of Mbiti, Stiloane, Jomo Kenyatta, Leopold Sengo, Dankwa, Idowu, who try to prove that, who have a problem with anybody who attack African culture,
Yeah.
but who are addressing their ideas to the Western elites and Western scholarship, and try to prove to this Western scholarship that Africans also had a God like the Christians. So they'll come up with these terminologies of monotheism, that we had the high God. When you speak of Mudimu, now some in their confusion, they say, oh, our system of God is a combination of monotheism and polytheism. It's neither the two. It's cosmology, is the wheel of life. That is why we talk of African cosmology and African cosmological science, that we are cosmologians, we're not theologians.
Yeah.
We don't have a book. We don't have a study of God. Theology is a study of God. We have experience of God. We experience God. We live godly life. So polytheism, monotheism is Western scholarship problem and Western Christian problem, but it's not African spirituality problem because we never at any time of our history define what we are dealing with in terms of polytheism or monotheism.
All right. And finally, the Great Town, what advice do you give to a young person who says, I'm soul searching, I'm seeking, where do I begin?
We're living in the age of decolonization. They must decolonize, they must de-Christianize, and they must deconstruct this Western construct that was imposed on us in terms of our world view and our life view, in terms of how we look at God. You know, God belongs to no religion. You don't have to be religious to have a relationship with God. A relationship with God is a spiritual thing. God is not a Christian. God is not a Muslim. God is not a Jew. So most of us, we left the church. We are far from the church, but we are very near to God, because you don't have to go to church to have a relationship with God. God does not even live in the church, even according to the Bible. He said when David or whoever wanted to build a temple for him, he said, I don't live in a building that is made by the hands of men. Now, if God does not live in a building that is made by the hands of men, what make you think that God lives in a book that is written by a man called the Bible? So you need to move away from the Bible understanding of God as a young person now who is into African spirituality. We need to return to our ancestors' consciousness in order to define our own consciousness. We need to be informed and instructed by our own ancestors. How did the ancestors define Mudimu wa Haluwe? What were they talking about? Mudimu wa Haluwe. Mudimu tlatlamacholo ram muluki Mudimu wa Nzwana Tsatsi. Abare kamata wasembo, you know, masibuyeleni embo asivela khona, because it is through returning to embo we will rejuvenate ourselves and recreate ourselves. So we need to move away. We need to go beyond what we were miseducated about ourselves. People invested a lot in misinforming us, the miseducation of the black child, the miseducation of the black youth. Most people who are not us spend a lot of time telling us about us. Now it is time to tell ourselves about us.
Is there an African God?
Yes. It is based on the
God of the Africans.
Yes. Ramasedi, Kamata, Mudimu. Hence I have explained from the beginning that all of this got nothing to do with God. All of this got nothing to do with what Jehovah is. All of this got nothing to do with what Yahweh is. So when people tell you about the one God, they are usually talking about the colonial God they try to impose on us and say that one God is Jehovah. But Jehovah's got nothing to do with Ramasedi. How many people did Ramasedi killed? How many people did Kamata killed? But how many people did the God of the Bible kill? Sodom and Gomorrah, the flood, the journey to the promised land. This is a genocidal God. So they distinguish that God from the African God, who never killed even a single soul.
We give thanks, the great one, Tau Tau Haramanuba, It's always a great pleasure to sip from your cup of wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen, we challenge you to subscribe to this channel. It's the only way to make this channel to grow in leaps and bounds, for us to keep on giving you this high-level quality conversations. My name is Semex Amaku.